There are a lot of elements of business that sometimes aren't stated, but understood. One of the biggest ones of all is that regardless of what your business is and where you started up, you're always looking for a place to expand, a new market to reach, and sometimes a new place to call home. Especially if that home gives you benefits like tax breaks, better buildings, better chance at expansion, etc. For tech companies, you likely know about Silicon Valley, the place in California hailed as the tech capital of the world in certain ways. But recently, many companies are leaving it and going somewhere else. Allow us to show you why tech companies are leaving California for Texas. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 6. What's going on? At first, this may seem like an overreactive statement that people are just leaving Silicon Valley for Texas, but it's more than that. A growing number of tech companies are packing their bags and moving out of the Golden State and heading to the Lone Star State. Leading names in the industry are now adding their names to the list. This is a major wake-up call, explained Sanjay Varshney. California's top income tax rate is the highest in the nation at 13.3%. HP and Oracle are moving their headquarters to Texas, while Tesla sets up a new facility in the Lone Star State. The three companies made their announcements within weeks of each other toward the end of 2020. Varshney fears more companies will follow the growing list. The day will come, if this goes along the path that we're on right now, that we'll see California not being a leader in innovation anymore and beyond the point of repair, said Varshney. Businessman and former Republican gubernatorial candidate John Cox believes one of the factors in efforts to recall Governor Gavin Newsom is a lack of support for businesses. It's leadership and management, Cox said. We need problem solving. We need somebody who's actually going to look at the problem and say, here's where we are and here's where we need to be. How do we get from A to B? The problem for them right now is that A is California, and B right now is Texas, and everyone is going from A to B. Number 5. Further provocation. Now, it's very easy to go and look at taxes and say it's the sole reason why things are going the way they are. But some are looking at the literal state of California and seeing that there's more than one factor going into this. You know, it's very troubling news because it's not unexpected, said Jim Wunderman, president and CEO of the Bay Area Council, a business and civic leadership group. We've been hearing from a lot of companies, from individuals who are talking about this, and it's been on the agenda for a while now, even pre-pandemic. But I think the pandemic really expedited a lot of organizations thinking about their future strategy and remote work. And the wildfires didn't help. It's true, the pandemic hit California very hard, and in fact, it's one of the major areas of the US that are all but surging because people aren't taking care of themselves, wearing masks, and thus aren't getting better. And while it's true the vaccine for the virus is getting spread around, it's not going out at a fast enough rate just yet. So thus, companies are likely expecting California to have more restrictions, more lockdowns, and so on that can cost them more money. Not to mention, with the wildfires, companies are almost always in danger of their businesses being burned down, or just as bad, the homes of their workers being burned down. And that's not exactly a great situation. Plus, as noted earlier, there are a bunch of basic restrictions in terms of laws that one lawmaker says is scaring business away. So what we see is numerous pieces of legislation that sort of further restrict businesses' ability to function the way business would prefer to function, they said. The regulatory scheme is really tough to work through. Everything takes much longer and costs much more money. As businesses all over the world have proven, they want the easiest way to get the job done and make the most profit. If they're facing state laws that restrict them, then they'll go to a state that doesn't have those restrictions, like Texas. Number 4. God bless Texas. Just to be clear here once again, this isn't just about money. It's also about location. And Texas does have a lot to offer for those willing to give it a shot. As of last November, 35 companies had relocated to or opened new facilities in the Austin area in 2020 alone, according to the data from the Austin Chamber of Commerce. Austin has many qualities that make it an attractive option. There are a lot of things about this community. It's got a great local flavor, a great music scene. It's an outdoor city, said Laura Huffman, president and CEO of the Austin Chamber, as reported by CNN Business. That's where people want to be. I think 2020 has taught us all that we have more choice when it comes to where we live. Number 3. Overreaction? So the biggest question here is whether this is an overreaction. Some will say it is, others will say it's not. Both sides have valid points. But for those who say it's an overreaction, they have a clear indication as to why this is. I think folks have been complaining about California's hostile business environment for decades, and that certainly hasn't prevented the state from being one of the biggest economies in the world and attracting entrepreneurs and businesses for decades, said Molly Turner, who studies the interface of technology, urban policy, and economic development at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. I think it's important for us to distinguish between the executives of these companies moving out of state versus the employees and the offices, Turner said, noting that Elon Musk and Oracle's Larry Ellison, who are both among the wealthiest people in the world, did very well in California and are now leaving for places with lower income taxes. Very interesting take on things, but there's more to this story. As there's no doubt, California is disproportionately reliant on the top 1% of income earners. Just that 1% is responsible for generating over 45% of all the personal income tax revenue, said H.D. Palmer, spokesperson for the California Department of Finance, noting it comes from things like capital gains and stock options and other income sources that are reliant on the stock market. So if a bunch of those top 1% people leave, there's a big problem in California whether people want to admit it or not. The other side of the coin is that we're seeing corporations and entities in California that are continuing to grow, continuing to hire, continuing to expand, continuing to go public, and generate revenue as well, Palmer said. Still, he says, we want to retain as many of those individuals here as we possibly can, and to continue to create the environment where we can see more of these types of activities. Number 2. Another option? But don't think for a second this exodus is limited to Texas alone. Florida, with its sunshine, affordable real estate, and low tax rates, is also growing as a tech and startup hub. Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian moved from San Francisco to Florida several years ago. What's more, New York-based Goldman Sachs is considering moving some of its operations to Miami, according to the New York Times. According to thenextmiami.com, 3 tech investors have announced their moves to Miami. David Bloomberg, founder and managing partner of the venture capital firm Bloomberg Capital, Keith Rabios, a general partner at Founders Fund and a former executive at PayPal and LinkedIn, and John Oringer, a former New York resident who's the founder and executive chairman of Shutterstock. Oringer recently bought a $42 million house in Miami. Plus, because of its lax measures in regards to the current state of the pandemic, people are able to do a lot more things in Florida than in states like California. Yes, this is a part of the problem in regards to the pandemic looming large in the US, but for some companies, well, they're companies, so they don't care at all about the public good, they just want what's good for business. Number 1. What happens now? That's a good question, and not one that's easily answered. Because right now there are going to be many companies questioning whether to leave California like Oracle, Musk, and so on. But whether they do or not will depend on the options they have, the cost of moving, what it would do to them long-term by moving, and so on. But the fact remains, there are many leaving Silicon Valley, and it's likely not going to stop in 2021. How California rebounds is up to them, so it's very much their move in the game of business chess. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the reasons why major tech companies are heading for Texas? Can you believe that the mass exodus is happening like it is? Do you think Silicon Valley is going to be able to keep going despite its losses? What does this mean for Texas as a whole in your eyes? Let us know in the comments below, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.